Okay, hello. Jesus. Oh, first thing in the morning recording. Hello there, hollows, and welcome to another video on the channel. In this video, I'm going to be ranking all of the FromSoftware Souls games or Souls-likes from worst to best. So, first of all, like I always say on these kind of videos, this is my opinion. If there is a game at the bottom of the list that I don't like, that you really like, that's fine. And if you don't like a game that I really like, that is also fine. That is the fun of having opinions. There's no need to go crazy in the comments. And I'm saying that because at number 7, I have Sekiro. Now, I know Sekiro really does have its fan base, and there's a lot of people that really like the game. I just happen to not be one of those people. People always say that you reach a certain point with Sekiro where the game just starts to make sense. It all just clicks in your head, and then you, from that point on, you just sort of just shoot forward in the game and you do really well for the back half of the game, essentially. For me, Sekiro, I just think it's not just about the gameplay with me, with Sekiro, as to why I don't like the game, but it is definitely a big significant factor. I have played recently Wolong Fallen Dynasty, and I am perfectly fine with that game. I enjoy the gameplay in that game, despite the fact that it has many similarities to Sekiro. I just feel like, for me, the gameplay of Sekiro, I just don't enjoy it, and I think it's too punishing and frustrating, for me personally, to make me want to play it much more and to learn and master the game. Additionally, another reason for that is because I personally find the world and the character and the story very bland and not very interesting to me, myself personally. Obviously that is subjective, whether you like that kind of story and that setting or not. I have never really liked it that much. I find the main character quite boring, and the whole world and the story, I think it just is very samey after a while. Another big aspect of it is the lack of any RPG mechanics. Yes, there are certain things you can upgrade during your time in the game, but a big thing, and one of the reasons why I really like Dark Souls, another thing that Wolong Fallen Dynasty did really well, is allowing you to customize your character and still having levels and things to put points into. That's a big part of the game for me, and is one of the reasons why I find the Souls games really enjoying and replayable, is because you can have different builds, you can try and approach things in different ways, and Sekiro doesn't really have that. There's a limited amount of that anyway in the game that you can really do. So next we're moving on to number 6, and that is Dark Souls 2. This is a game that seems to have really been blown up a bit on YouTube in the last few months. There's a lot of content about Dark Souls 2 that seems to be being posted. People have been looking back at Dark Souls 2, I feel like, and realizing it's not as bad. I disagree. I still think it is by far the worst Souls-like game, because to me, Sekiro isn't really a Souls-like game. Dark Souls 2, out of the games that are very clearly, have a stamina management system and all that kind of stuff, and customizable characters and things, Dark Souls 2 is, to me, by far the worst entry in the series in that regard. And that's not to say it's a bad game. You got to realize, every one of the games on this list are fantastic in my opinion, but there has to be a best and there has to be a worst. That's just how things go. But they're all fantastic games. I'll give them all 10 out of 10s, honestly, because FromSoftware games are just that good. But Dark Souls 2 happens to just be the weakest one out of the Souls, the main Souls ones anyway. The main reason for this is the gameplay mechanics. I explained it at length in 2 videos. One is my main Dark Souls 2 critical analysis video, and I did a separate video which was just talking about the gameplay mechanics and why the gameplay mechanics specifically are what really let this game down. And for me, it is just that. It's the gameplay feel, the way you move your character, the speed at which you do certain actions, the hitboxes, the stamina, the big delay from when your stamina runs out to when it recharges is much greater than in every single other game. The combat pacing is slower and more clunky than other games in the series. The controller dead zones means that you don't feel like you have as fine control over your character. There's a whole multitude of reasons why Dark Souls 2 falls below the other entries in the series, in my opinion. And if you would like to hear more of my opinions on that, please feel free to check out some of those other videos on the channel. There should be a link to them in the description, if I remember, and I'm not stupid. Moving on then to the next entry, we have Elden Ring is at number 5. Elden Ring is a very good game. Let's just say there's a big gap between Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring, okay? Number 6 and number 5, there's a big gap. Imagine there's a couple of invisible entries here. Because Elden Ring is a lot better than Dark Souls 2, it's just that I prefer the other games more than it. Elden Ring is still a fantastic game, but I feel like the main thing that lets it down for me is having very repetitive dungeons that feel like they are... It's almost like the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne. They feel very repetitive, very samey. You're going through the same things again and again, and I find them very tedious. There's also a lot of repeated bosses, which I really, really don't like, and I have massive issues with this. As I said in a video talking about it more, one of the biggest issues for me is that, like, if you had Dark Souls 3, and there were 3 Pontiff Sullivans in that game, it would really take away from the Pontiff Sullivan fight. And that's an awesome fight. But then in Elden Ring, you've got Morgott, Margit, and then he's also a mini-boss. It really takes away from that fight. That's an awesome fight. And would be really memorable to me as like the main first boss of that game, and how challenging it is. And it was a big roadblock for a lot of people. But then when that boss is reused 3 times, it massively takes away from that encounter. And I really don't like that. Also, you've got a tacked-on crafting system and an open world that does start to feel samey in certain areas. It's certainly a million times better than other open world games. But I personally feel that if they did a sequel to Elden Ring, I really hope they would refine a lot of this stuff, and there's a massive chance it would be one of the best games in the series, if not like number 1 or number 2. But because of some of the shortcomings, it's the reason why it's at number 5 on my list. At number 4, we have Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is a fantastic game. I have had bad experiences with it. And the main reason for this is playing it on an Xbox. And Xbox One is when I first played Dark Souls 3. And if you played this game on a PlayStation, you wouldn't probably have the same issue that I had. And that is that the frame rate tanks so much, and the graphics look really pixely and really bad on the Xbox. I really, really struggled to get through this game. I shouldn't allow it to cloud my judgment of the game. But there are several other factors as well as to why it's in this place. But it really did take my first experience with this game. So I do have almost like a... looking back at it badly, if you understand what I mean. But that's because on the PlayStation 4, it got a PS4 Pro enhanced upgrade, and on the on the PC, obviously, you can tinker with it to make it look really good. On the Xbox, it never received any of that. And I honestly am of the opinion that the version that was shipped on the Xbox is unacceptable, because Vort is one where it really tanks. The Dance Through the Boreal Valley, it really tanks. And there's several ones in the DLC where the performance tanks so much that you can barely play the game. It's that bad. Even I play it on an Xbox Series X now. I've played it through on there. And it still has the same issues because they never patched it to make it utilize the power of the upgraded consoles. And I honestly think it's an unacceptable experience. Anyway, that's going on a bit of a tangent, but my issues with Dark Souls 3 are how linear it is a massive issue for me personally. It really does affect my experience with the game. In Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1, you can approach those games from lots of different angles. The same with Demon Souls. You can choose the order in which you want to complete certain areas. Bloodborne is also really good at this, which we're going to get to in a second. The freedom you have to do certain things in certain orders is one of the main things that makes those games really replayable to me. I honestly would say Bloodborne is more replayable to me than Dark Souls 3, even though in Dark Souls 3 you have more playstyles and more options available to you for builds and things like that. But in Bloodborne, you can approach different areas in certain different orders, and I really like that. I like having the freedom to do certain things before I do other things and all that kind of stuff. And Dark Souls 3 also still does not have the interconnected world and level design, which I thought that they had improved in Bloodborne. Bloodborne had several moments where I was like, oh, this is where I am again, which was really awesome to me, mainly in the front half of the game. I really liked that, and it felt like they were sort of returning to that. And then in Dark Souls 3, you have what is essentially just a branch with maybe a spoke on it, and then maybe another little spoke on it, but then you've got to go back to that main branch. There's always... You might have one little optional area that you can do here, but then you have to go back to the main branch. and then another little optional area here, but you've got to go back to that main branch again. And I really do not like that. I would love it if there was some way you could go to certain other areas first, and then maybe some of those areas connected to each other. And I think this was caused mainly by not having Firelink Shrine connected to the main world. If Firelink Shrine was connected to certain areas, that would be awesome. There's even some times in Dark Souls 3, though, where you can see one area from another area, but you can't get there. Like, there's the one bridge, which is a main example to me. I can't exactly remember for the life of me what area it's in, because I haven't played Dark Souls 3 for a bit of time. But there's one area where you stand on one side of the bridge, and then later you can be on the other side of the bridge, but they don't connect to each other. And if they connected, that'd be so awesome. Even have it so maybe you have to open the lever from the other side, and then it opens a gate, which allows you to cross the bridge. But they didn't do that, and I find that really frustrating. It's like they deliberately hindered some parts of the world design, instead of really playing into that interconnected world, which I really like, and is one of the main things that I like about the Souls series. Then, moving on, we have Bloodborne. I did touch on Bloodborne a little bit then, but Bloodborne does so many things fantastically. Honestly, I was really missing out for so many years because I only dabbled into Bloodborne recently. I still haven't actually beaten the game, but I'd say I'm about 3/4 of the way through. Currently warming up for doing my Let's Play, which I'm going to do after my Dark Souls 2 Let's Play is finished. I've mainly been warming up because Bloodborne is so different to the other games that I wanted to take a bit of time to appreciate and learn the new mechanics and the new feel of the game, instead of just rushing into it for the Let's Play. Then maybe getting frustrated that I can't do things straight away because I know that it's a Let's Play and that people are going to be watching it. So I wanted to make sure that I get a good understanding of the game before I do my Let's Play for it on this channel. And I am really having a great time with Bloodborne. I understand the reason why people love it so much. There are some slight frustrations that I have with the game, which I'll get to more when I discuss it at length in my analysis video and all that kind of stuff. But any issues I have with Bloodborne are massively outshone by the amazing things it does really well. The interconnected world, the theme, the bosses, the music. It has so many awesome things about it. I really love that game. The only issue that I personally have with Bloodborne, probably, which I would say brings it down in the list, is just a personal preference, and that's actually just the speed and the gameplay. I have always preferred the Dark Souls and Demon Souls approach, so Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2, where it's a bit slower and more methodical. Dark Souls 2 is too slow. I understand that's a criticism I had with it. It's too slow. It takes it to a different level. But the Dark Souls 1 pace of combat and Demon Souls pace of combat, I just generally prefer. And that's something that, is just subjective. It's something that I like more. And that's the only reason why really Bloodborne is lower. Sometimes, things are just so quick, and then you get whacked, caught in a chain attack of 3 hits that you're left on the floor, and then they finish you off. Things like that. And because the game has a fantastic regain system, which I really love, and makes you able to be more reckless and really does play into the speed of combat in Bloodborne. When the game starts to do things which take away from that, though, is where it sort of falters a bit. Like Frenzy is a big issue. Frenzy really should have been patched even more, in my opinion, and that does take away from some of the things in the latter half of the game. And also enemies having some grab attacks and things, and sometimes enemies have combos where, if you just make one little mistake, they can get you like crazy, and then you can't regain your health and things like that. But to be honest, Bloodborne is an absolutely phenomenal game, and I cannot really, the top 3 games here are all incredibly close. And it's only just a personal preference thing, but I would say they are all phenomenal masterpieces. Number 2, we have Demon Souls. I'm putting the remake and the original here because I personally don't mind either version of them. I think they're both as good as each other. I know some people have issue with the music and certain visuals in the remake, but I played the original game just before I played the remake, but a couple of months before. So I have a similar experience with both of them, really. And I have played the original game to completion now, and I've played the remake to completion several times. I think they are both fantastic, phenomenal games. They have the same combat pacing that the original Dark Souls has, which I really, really like. That's one of the reasons why Bloodborne was 3 and Demon Souls is at 2. But Demon Souls is definitely not without issue. There are definitely some issues with some areas which are very, very frustrating. Having to grind for the grass is a frustration. However, I think when you get better at the game, and if you approach the game knowing you're going to have to potentially save some souls to buy grass at times, it alleviates that issue. Also, I don't think any of the bosses are really punishing enough to where you would need to go out of your way to go and grind for some grass to be able to effectively beat them. Flame Lurker is the only one I ever had an issue with, and even then now, I've beaten him a couple of times, I don't have as much of an issue with him, and I don't need to go and farm for grass or anything like that. The upgrade paths are another thing which can be potentially frustrating. However, again, if you know what you're going to be speccing into when you start the game, I feel like you can sort of account for that, accommodate for that, and then it is not as much of an issue. But for me, the world of Demon Souls, the gameplay of Demon Souls, the freedom you have in Demon Souls, even though it isn't actually an interconnected world, it is still really good. And I think it shows that you don't necessarily need an integrated world, because that's not what they were going for here, and therefore I don't hold it against the game. That's not the style they were going for. And I think Demon Souls is a fantastic game. So then, number one, obviously, any of you who know me would know what was going to be number one. The original Dark Souls. I absolutely love this game. I have beaten this game probably about 15 or 20 times now, and it's my favorite game of all time for good reason. The combat is perfect, the world is perfect, the characters and the character quests are amazing. The story, again, interconnected levels and world design is a massive thing for me. This game has it absolutely fantastically. The only issue with this game is the back half of the game. I wouldn't say the back half, the back third. After all the season Smo, there are a couple of frustrations there. But for me, I overlook those because the game is so good and the combat is so good that even the frustrations I have with those areas, I can still look past when I see all the amazing things that the game does in other areas. And I don't think, even then, I still don't think Lost Izalith is terrible. Like, Shrine of Amana to me is way worse than Lost Izalith. It is frustrating in Lost Izalith, yes, but I think it's nowhere near as bad as some people sometimes think. For me, the Duke's Archives is the main issue I have with this game, but I still think Tomb of Giants is still a good area. It can be a bit frustrating, but I don't think it's a deal breaker. And the same with New Londo Ruins. I think New Londo Ruins is a really good area, actually. So really, even then, you're looking at only maybe 2 of those final areas being bad. But I don't think it completely takes away from the game, in my opinion. So, let me know your own list down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. A shout out to my member, T-Morts. Thank you very much for supporting me. I really do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe even share the video with anyone you enjoyed if it was good enough. Thank you again for watching. This is SoulReborn, signing out. Have a good one.